Hello, everyone. It's good to see you on our webinar. This is yet another episode of our series of webinars for teenagers. My name is Dorota Ścisłowska, and my guest today is Jakub Matuszewski.
Hi, everyone.
And we're going to talk about programming. But first, let's check how you learned the vocabulary for today. If you didn't have a chance to go to our platform to do the tasks there, it's okay. Try and make a guess. I have a presentation here for you with some questions. Let me start the presentation. The first question is, generally the task is to pick one of the two options and fill in the gap. So the first sentence is, all the photographs are stored using rather than hard drives. What do you think that is? Is it cloud services? Oh, or is it a bug? What do you think? Okay, I have an answer from Mateusz. Cloud services, very good. Let's see the next one. That is the correct answer that you see over here. And the next one is not absolutely necessary. It is just one of the structures that are available to help you develop better and faster. What do you think that is? Is that a framework or a server? Okay, I have an answer from Mateusz, framework, and Philip. Okay, you guys are very good. Let's confirm. Yes, that is the correct answer. Okay, next one. The customers have seen it was very easy to use with forms they could fill out. Is it compiler or user interface? Let's see, what do you think? User interface, an answer from Jakub. I hope that's not you, Jakub, answering, right?
No, it's not me.
Okay, let's see. That is the correct answer. Excellent. Next question. The method saves clients money and time because the client tests and approves the products at each step. Is it framework or is it agile development? Agile development, Mateusz, very good. That is the correct answer. Okay, and next question. I need to import data from the into my word processor. Database or syntax? I see a lot of correct answers for the previous question. Thank you for being so active on the chat, guys. Okay, yes, it is database, very good. Okay, and next question. John changed at the end of the programming code, which created a bug. User interface or variable? Another correct answer from Mateusz and many other participants. Very good. Okay. Next question. He used on his own machine to do simple math. Cloud services or an algorithm? Okay, an algorithm. Yes, excellent. Very good, guys. Thank you for your quick answers. Okay. She finished her coding by running it through the compiler or variable. Compiler, excellent. Okay. Next question. Caused the company's computer system to crash? A bug or agile development? A bug, Marcianna, very good. Well done. Okay. Is a self-contained module of code that accomplishes a specific task. Is that database or function? Mateusz, database, very good again. Let's see. Okay. Next question. Martha connected to the so she could upload the picture. Server or variable? Server, yes, excellent. Okay. And the last question I have for you today. People can sometimes understand each other if they don't use proper grammar, but a program will have errors if you don't use the correct cloud services or syntax. Syntax, yes, very good, guys. Well done. Okay, we've gone through the terminology. I think you're prepared to ask questions about programming and to listen to us talk about programming. And
Yep. Let's hope so.
Okay, so, well, first of all, Jakub, could you tell us a little bit about how it is, something about yourself, about your work, and how it is for you to work during those weird times of quarantine?
Yep, sure thing. So let me just pull up the presentation here so I can have some background. All right, so we start with a nice car and a big question in general. Is programming a future or a hyped white collar job? Yeah, so really quick, something about myself. So I've been a front-end engineer for over 12 years now. And almost always I've been working for companies over the internet. So I started working for a company in Austria, then I worked for a company from Los Angeles, and up to this day I'm working remotely. Right now I work for a company called AFK in Sydney.
So what does it mean to work remotely?
So it means exactly what we are doing right now. So basically, we are connecting over the internet to talk about necessary tasks and things to be coded or programmed. We have meetings, we send emails, basically. So.
Okay, so it seems like not much has changed for you since the quarantine happened then.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, of course, except the usual stuff that affects everyone. So I cannot go outside that easily. You cannot watch a movie in a cinema, or you cannot cut your hair, for instance. But but other than that, you know, we programmers, we're basically fine. It's like it's like Ross used to say, "I'm fine." Yeah. It might be a bit squeaky, but other than that, all is normal.
Okay, I don't think I mentioned it before. If you guys have any questions to Jakub, please write them on the chat. You can mark them as a question, and this way we can see it a little easier. And I will read those questions to Jakub so that he can answer them, okay? All right, so can you tell us a little bit more about programming and what it is exactly and how it changed the world?
All right. So basically, programming, to quote Wikipedia here, is the process of designing and building an executable computer program to accomplish specific computing result, which might sound a bit complicated. So I'll try to put this in layman terms. Just very plainly, it's a process of writing a set of instructions. So let's say it's like you would speak to a child, telling, let's say, your son or your daughter to go to the store and buy certain things from the list. So programming essentially is exactly like that. You're telling computer in special words with special syntax to do certain operations or instructions. So it always boils down to knowing what you want to say using specified language. And once you know what you want to say, you have to type it, right? So really, we are glorified craftsmen, if you will. So we just lay the foundation for the computers to do all the heavy lifting.
Okay. Right. So could you tell us a little bit more about what about the different branches of programming? I'm assuming there are like different things that different programmers do, right?
Absolutely, yes, exactly. So basically, we're here today thanks to all the hard work over hundreds of years, because people were thinking about computers and how to make it all work, even before we had processors and displays and the internet. But nowadays we have all that, and thanks to that we can talk easily, even though we are many kilometers apart. So just to give you a really brief overview of different branches or areas, if you will, of expertise you can have, or you can pursue, let's say. So here is a list of 10 elements. Of course, this presentation will be available later on if you would like to read through this with your own pace. But looking from the global perspective, we can divide the whole industry into big branches. So let's say we have game developers, right? We have AI specialists. This is fairly new. We have software engineers who build desktop applications, who build mobile applications, and we have two big important branches which go under the internet branch, which is front-end engineers and back-end engineers. So I don't want to go into too much detail on those elements, but let's focus here on the internet and front-end and back-end and sysops and DevOps. So basically, those are the four main jobs that are required for the internet to run, and for us to be able to talk and exchange voice and video over the internet. So basically, my specialty is front-end. So whatever you see on your screen, whatever you see in your browser, clicking through Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, this is all so-called interface, right? So all
I thought you were going to
graphical...
say this is all designed by me.
No. Actually, the process of creating interfaces is rather complex, and it takes a lot of steps. Actually, you might think it's really simple, but it takes a lot of thinking where to put certain elements for us to be able to use them, right? It's like with, let's say, it's like with your iPhone or your MacBook. If things work seamlessly and you don't think too much about it, you really enjoy using those items, right? So interfaces, they are important because they appeal to us, right? If a website is pretty, we like to use it, right? If something is ugly, we would like to close this as quickly as possible. So I am responsible for taking, let's say, a static image, cutting it and making it interactive, right? So you can click on a certain button and then certain action is performed, right? And the information is being sent back to you from the servers. And while we're on the server topic, so servers are responsible for gathering and sending all the information you require at certain time to your computer so they can be displayed on your screen, right? So everything you type on your Facebook page or every video you upload to the internet, it has to be stored somewhere, and it's typically stored on the server.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of questions here on the chat. I'll read you the first one. It's from Mateusz. And the question is learning programming more about learning a new language or something else?
Okay, so I would say it's a two-step process, really. So first you would start with learning the basics, right? So it's like with learning a language. There are different languages. We have English, we have Polish, etc. But each of those languages have something in common. They have common syntax, right? Like we know that the sentence consists of certain elements, right? So the same with programming. I use this term agnostic, right? So there are words like, or terms like variables or classes or objects that you need to learn first just to be able to move forward. And once you understand those global concepts, so basic rules, right? That every program works in a similar way and every language in the end is composed similarly, just using different words, right? So once you lay the groundwork and you understand basic rules of programming world, then you can move on to learning particular languages. And from there on, it's easier, right? Because you're gaining knowledge on each step, right? So it may be a bit harder to start, but then with every year and every, let's say, new language you would like to explore and pursue, it's getting easier.
I have a question of my own. I will go to the questions on the chat in a second, but how many languages does a regular programmer know or has to know to be good at their job?
Okay, so...
or are there specialists in just one language?
Yes. So it all depends on what grinds your gears, as they say. So you may be, let's say, a Java programmer who's focused solely on that technology, right? Because what you need to understand is that language is a building block, and with that building block, you create libraries and frameworks, right? Because everything is pretty complex, and for us to be able to connect over the internet, many steps have to be executed. Therefore, some languages, especially let's say Java or C, are very vast in terms of number of tools and technologies and frameworks and libraries you need to know. Therefore, if you want to master something really, really good, you probably are sticking to one language. But of course, you can be skilled in many languages. So for instance, in my line of work, you need to know at least one programming language, which is JavaScript. But on top of that, you need to know HTML and CSS, and HTML is a hypertext markup language. It is used to construct the document structure. So if you have a website, it consists of small building blocks, right? And then CSS is being used to style it, right? So at the start, everything is just a plain text, and with CSS, you make it pretty.
Okay.
And so basically you need to know a lot of elements to be able to fully execute your responsibilities, right? So it's up to individual person whether they want to stick to one language and become very good at it, or if they want to, let's say, be pretty good at front end and pretty good at back end, right? And the person who's skillful in both of these areas we call full stack, right? So people who can do the full stack of responsibilities. So one person in theory can build a whole website or a whole system from the ground up.
Okay, thank you. Next question I have here from Marciana. What do you think? Will the demand for programmers increase in the next years or not, or to the contrary?
Actually, this is a great question because I already have an answer to that in the presentation, but it's a last slide. But okay, let's answer it now. So I think that the demand is growing and it will be growing, and the reason for that, there are actually a couple of things to consider. So first of all, since early stages. Yeah.
I'm going to stop the presentation then for now. Okay.
Okay. All right. Sure thing. Yeah. So since the beginnings of the internet, right, we had those systems written in old languages like Fortran or COBOL, and some of those systems in 2020 they still exist and they need to be maintained, right? So over the 30 years, we have had many platforms and systems developed, and they need to be maintained because the cost of rewriting them is too high, right? So on top of that, we are creating all the new tools and all the new platforms, and we right now have AI, we have driverless cars. We have so-called Internet of Things, right? So we have intelligent thermostats, we have Alexas, we have Siris, we have all those personal assistants and things that you can hook up to the internet, right? Right now you can buy not a dishwasher, but a washer from Samsung that will tell you via the internet that everything is ready for you to take out. So basically everything is being connected to the internet. Therefore, we will need more and more specialists who will be able to code those existing platforms or create new ones.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Marciana. We have another question from Mysterious, I think. So he wants to know, how long have you studied? Have you been studying codes and algorithms, or how long did it take you to learn this, I guess?
Okay. So one thing, I am self-taught. So I was a student of political science, so something completely different way back. But after studying for 4 years, I realized that it's kind of a dead end, at least in my case. God forbid I'm not discouraging anyone from not studying social sciences or whatever. But then I realized that programming is quite interesting, and I started reading a lot and learning, but it was a bit of a slower pace. But in general, learning never ends. You have to be on top of your game, and the pace is fast in this industry. Therefore, even right now, daily, I'm learning blogs, I'm watching videos, I'm learning new frameworks, etc., etc. So it's not like you can be done at some point. Of course, because there was mention of algorithms and data structures, there are some things that haven't changed and probably won't change ever. Like basic building blocks, right? So once you know these, you can apply those information on top of any framework, right? Because they are agnostic. They can be applied in any language. So I would say it took me about 2.5 to 3 years to be able to comfortably code and develop websites. But of course, it varies. It depends on what you want to do, right? Because sometimes you want to be, let's say, a backend dev, or you want to code applications for the iPhones or Android phones, and then your learning path might be a bit different. But nowadays, with all the information on the internet that's available freely, I would say if you spend the time, within, let's say, 6 to 7 months, you can be actually writing some pretty basic stuff, but it will help you to get or to land your first job or internship.
Okay, and there's a question from Dot. How old were you when you started learning how to be a programmer? So when did you start?
So
you said at university, but how old were you?
Yeah, but I was pretty old. I actually started learning when I was 21. So in some cases, it's like terribly old. Because nowadays, this is cool, because nowadays we have toys like, let's say, Lego Mindstorms, which will teach kids in their 13s or 14s to build and program their first little computers and toys, right? So you can start really early. There's even a tool from Apple, I think. It's called iOS Playground, and you can launch it on the iPad, and you can play with the code in a very basic way, right? So I was pretty old. I was 21, but it's never too late to start, actually. So.
Okay, and a question from Marta. What was the most interesting company to work for? Do you want me to pull up the first slide that has the logos?
Oh yeah, sure.
I can do that for you.
All right, cool. Actually, I think I can be quicker.
Okay.
All right, so let me go just one step back. All right, so those are only 6 of the clients I used to work for. So most interesting, I would say, most interesting was a project we did for BMW. It was a project for a Swiss BMW branch. Basically, it was a small project, but very interesting and kind of cool, because we took engine sounds of some of the cars that BMW makes, and you were able to draw a Christmas tree using a visualization of engine sound, right? So it's like, do you know what equalizer is on your sound system?
I don't.
Okay, so the equalizer shows you the visual of a sound wave, right? So higher tones will go up and lower tones will be close to the ground, so to speak, right? So we have built this small website where you could accelerate a virtual throttle, right? This is a pedal in the car, you press to go faster.
Yeah.
And then the engine revs would go up, right? So
Yes.
the sound wave would change. And the goal was to generate the shape of a sound tree, so-called sound tree, in the 30 seconds that you were given. And later on, if you lived in Switzerland, you could go to your BMW dealership and pick up 3D printed tree that you generated with sound.
Okay.
So this was the cool thing that we did a couple of years back. The other one was for Samsung. We did interactive video that you generated real time. We had 36 different instruments or different audio tracks, and for each audio track we had different GIF, and you could compose your own track, right? Because you had different instruments, so you could turn them on and off, and therefore generate your own video clip, which you would later upload to YouTube. So those things were pretty cool. They landed us some awards and an article in a German magazine. But the most demanding client was Credit Suisse, and I actually used to work for them in Switzerland. And we had a big project for over 140 people. So it was like a big corporate system, and it really shows you how complex everything gets when you're going big.
So now we have more questions about those logos, about those companies. There's a question about your project for, is it EA? Is that how I should read it?
Yeah.
And Nike.
All right, so for Electronic Arts, we actually built this cool website. It was a Polish website for the premiere of FIFA 12 in Poland. We did this interactive website with Jakub Błaszczykowski, which is a Polish footballer. I think he plays for Borussia Dortmund right now. And we did get so-called FWA, this is a favorite website award. And it was basically a mini site that promoted the game, but it had nice animations and a known player talking to you and interacting with you through the website, so it was quite nice. And for Nike, in the same year, I think, or a year later, we built it was an interactive application for the event called Run Warsaw. I think we still have those in Warsaw actually, and it was like a virtual fight. Between East Bank and West Bank of Vistula River. So you could go for a run, and with the application you could post pictures and map your route you were running on, and it would get posted to the website, and you could browse the map. You could see all the routes that people were running, their pictures, their comments, etc.
Wow, that sounds really cool, actually. Okay, so you are talking about all those projects and the awards that you got, but let's talk about money a little bit. I know that there is a lot of people who are related to IT who are really, really rich. Could you give us some more details about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it really excites people, right, to hear amazing stories about people who were like typical Joes or programmers, and then overnight they suddenly became really, really rich. I mean, I think in my time the most notable example of that was the transaction of selling the Instagram. Right, so this social media app, Instagram, was sold to Facebook for 1 billion, right? It was like crazy amount of cash at that time. And since then, I think we have this term unicorn, which describes a startup that is worth over $1 billion.
Okay.
Right. So here are, unfortunately, the screenshot is not that great, but on the Forbes 500 list, in the first 20 places on that list, we have, let me see, we have 8 billionaires that are in the tech industry, right? So starting with Jeff Bezos, which is currently the wealthiest man on the planet. And even though he has the Amazon online store, you may or may not know that he also owns the platform called AWS. It's Amazon Web Services, right? It's a cloud service provider. I mean, actually, it's a bit broader than that because they have many tools. But what is interesting about this is the fact that Amazon noticed that there were times where clients were not so active on their website, right? But they had to have infrastructure that would handle a lot of traffic. So they realized that they can sell the servers that are idle to the customers who want to use them as their own machines, right? So they build another business on top of the existing one. So money certainly is exciting, and some crazy transactions have been going on for a couple of years now. So let's say Facebook buying WhatsApp for, I think it was 20 billion. And it makes your eyes bleed, because there's so much money in the industry. Of course, now we have a bit different times ahead, so probably transactions won't be so amazing, and we have to be focused more on retaining what we have. But let me go to another slide really quickly to show you like more down-to-earth approach for everyone else who's not on the Forbes 500 list. So here you can see average income of developers in different countries, depending on their experience, right? So just you need to keep in mind that costs of living in different countries varies very much, right? So let's say if you live in Switzerland or United States, especially in New York or Silicon Valley, your living costs will be way bigger than they are, let's say, in Warsaw or smaller Polish cities. Therefore, even though those salaries might look exciting, they are not that that opulent.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about what is the most adequate thing to begin self-learning from? You talked about the fact that you are self-taught. So where do you start? If you want to?
So whoever asked that question is the 5th or 6th person who asked me that question over the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because with quarantine now, people are staying at home and thinking, okay, I could be making money out of this, right? So I would say that from a perspective of a person who doesn't know that much about programming, and it's all overwhelming because it can get pretty overwhelming quite fast, right? So you gotta pace yourself, and what's important is to get into something that shows you positive results of your actions pretty quickly, so you don't get discouraged because you tried something and it didn't work, and after a few days you just give up because it doesn't make sense. So from my perspective, I would say start small with HTML, CSS, because they don't require you to learn programming basics, but they will give you like a gentle introduction into the world of programming, and from there you can move to JavaScript. But if you want to focus on like real hardcore programming languages, you can jump to Python or Java.
Okay, and then next.
Okay, so sorry, let me just maybe complete this question, because some people, of course, might be interested only in the core programming stuff. So I would say pick up any book about the language that looks exciting, right? Because let's say in banking industry, Java is king. So it's being used across all the platforms because it's secure, it's enterprise ready, etc., etc. So basically, you can pick up any book about Java, and then you can read, let's say, first 80 or 100 pages, because there you will have an introduction to programming itself. So you will learn about what a class is, what a variable is, how the program works, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, kind of job related. So do you apply for a job, or do they find you on some job websites? How does that work? If you're a programmer, how do you find gigs, let's say?
Okay, so it's been changing over the years, and it depends who are you and where you want to work. Because if you want to work for so-called Big Four, so Amazon, Apple, Google, or Facebook, then you probably have to be A, very good, and B, you have to apply yourself and go through a strenuous, so very hard recruitment process. But typically, there are plenty of groups, let's say on Facebook, that will post weekly or even daily. I'm sorry, I'm missing a word. They will post weekly or daily listings of jobs that are available. And the good thing is, in our industry, the salary requirement is always there, so you know from the start what you will be earning, and you will know about all the perks, right? So perks are all the extra things you get on top of your salary, like so say laptops, or extra money for conferences, or paid maternity leaves, or private healthcare, etc.
Okay, there is one more question about some projects you worked on and it just disappeared. So did you ever do anything for Valve or CD Projekt Red? Are those both gaming companies?
Yes, so I never worked for them. If I would, I probably would be working on promotional websites, because I'm not in game industry. This is like completely different area of expertise. And although you use similar languages in many cases, C# or C from Microsoft, you're working with different tool set, and it's like completely different world. So me personally, I haven't worked for them, but if you're looking into starting game developer career, I would recommend into looking at Unreal Engine or Unity engines. So those are whole engines built for developers, so they can create games by themselves. But of course, knowledge about fundamentals of programming is necessary either way.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. One more question from Dot. Do you consider it more profitable being skilled in some commonly used languages or the more underground ones? And we have Python or C as the examples of the common languages and R as the example of the underground languages.
Okay, so I would say R is not that underground anymore because it's being used heavily in data analytics and working with AI. I would say it varies because you might be a guy who used to code in COBOL and it's a language that's practically dead. But if there's a need for a specialist with your skill set, then they will pay a lot to get you. So I would say go with your gut, do what interests you, because in the end, almost always good money will find you either way. Of course, there are some languages that are considered superior to others. So let's say if you're a Python developer or C developer, or let's say Java, or maybe the Objective-C, you might feel very proud of yourself, and you might laugh at guys who code in PHP or like me in JavaScript, right? Because those languages are not great. But still, you can get very well paid writing code in JavaScript or Python. So go with your gut, do what you like, and rest will follow.
Okay, before we started this meeting, we were talking a little bit about like the misconceptions of what it means to be a programmer, right? And I think it goes in line a little bit with that question that we have here from Mateusz. What is the hardest thing in learning programming? Maybe we can link those two.
All right, so let me start by answering this question, and we will segue into what you asked me just a second ago. So, what is the hardest thing? The hardest thing I would say is persistence, because you need to be patient and you need to be able to ask right questions and be kind of like a detective, because everything is getting more and more complex each year. So especially when starting, you're facing this huge wall of information that you have to jump over, and it's really easy to just throw everything aside because you're learning new terms like minute after minute. So you have to be patient and you have to be able to focus. But once you master that and you overcome the frustration of not knowing everything, you'll be able to slowly pick up the pace. And then once you find the right answers, you will feel the satisfaction and it will propel you to the next level.
Okay.
Yeah, and that being said, I can say that common misconceptions. So the first one is that you have to be great at math.
So that answers Marta's question here on the chat that just popped up. Do you need to have mathematical skills?
Well, I would say you don't have to have mathematical skills which are on a killer level, but one skill that you have to have is logical thinking or logical reasoning, because it's necessary to follow certain rules and draw conclusions from information given. So of course it is great if you understand math and if you feel comfortable in that world, because it will get you to completely different level. Because let's say if you want to apply to Amazon or Google, or if you want to work with algorithms, because, okay, so let me maybe make a step back. In general, developers or programmers, we work with tools that were created let's say even many years ago, right? So it's not necessary for you to apply certain data structures or algorithms by yourself. You will use a library for that. But it's certainly helpful to know how things work. But you can learn this over time. You don't need to be an expert, in math to get started. All you need to do is to speak a bit of English, because English is common language in our industry. So it's always good to start learning in English, because you won't later on have the problem with transitioning, let's say, from Polish to English when translating certain terms or concepts. So you don't have to be great at math. You have to be able to logically think, and that is all for the start. And if you start with HTML or CSS, you don't even need math. You just need ability to read and understand. So the second one, this is a job only for guys. I would say that is absolutely not true. And even though our environment is really mostly male-oriented, I would say women are welcome. And one of the first programmers was a woman. So Ada Lovelace is considered first programmer, even though computers did not exist in her time, but she was responsible for helping with creating first pieces of code. So I would encourage girls to pursue that career if they feel like it, because there is no difference really. So if it excites you, do it, and you don't have to care, right? You can stay at home, you can do your thing and push your code online, and no one will care. So we are all equals. Third one is that you have to be an introvert. Well, you don't, but it certainly helps to be able to spend a lot of time in front of the screen, let's say, being focused and not feeling the need to go out and interact with the world. But certainly, if you're an extrovert, so we know what introvert and extrovert is, right?
Go ahead, explain it.
All right, so introvert is a person who is more closed and is preferring solitude more than being around people and partying or going out. And the extrovert is the opposite. It is a person who needs to be in the center of attention and who's joyful, who loves to interact with people, etc. So if you're an introvert, you certainly are very well suited for this kind of job. But if you're an extrovert and if you want to pursue career in IT, you can always find yourself, maybe as a project manager, or someone else who can be like in between the two worlds. So you don't have to be a hardcore developer closed somewhere in the basement with no light. And last one is you can work from anywhere. On paper, it is true. You can work from anywhere. I mean, I used to work from Australia while I was traveling there. Then I went to Dubai and I was working all the time. All you need is the internet. There are some downsides, of course, to that, because sometimes you have time zone differences and the internet is not really good. So you have to consider that. But all in all, I would say it is possible with some limitations.
Okay, I have one more very specific question, and I'm not sure if I can read it right. Is C#? Is that a language?
It's called C#. Yeah.
C#. Okay. Thank you. So is it hard?
I would say it's exactly like any other language. The main difference when learning new language is learning the syntax, because different languages, especially if you look at Python versus, let's say, C# or Java, they have some major differences in how you write the code. But in general, it's not hard. It's equally, it's equally hard compared to any other language.
Okay, we're almost running out of time. Can you just tell us a little bit about if programming is the future of the world, you think?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and actually this is what I wanted to close with. So the image on this slideshow shows vision of Los Angeles in 2013. This drawing was made in late 1980s. So basically, we know now that it's not true. In 2013, Los Angeles was struggling with recession as the rest of the world. So we know nowadays that world typically doesn't look like we plan it to in the future. But if we look on the left side, you can see some of the terms that I think will be becoming more important and more visible in the media in the future. So basically, the big thing that's been around for a couple of years now is AI, which right now it's, I would say, in a bit of a disarray. Because no one really has the perfect recipe on how to use it and how to apply this in different fields. There are some attempts. So let's say IBM has developed this tool called Watson that would help doctors analyze images from, X-rays. To assess if the patient will have cancer or not. But it wasn't perfect. So it's still work in progress, but I think that in the future, this will probably attract more and more people from academia, especially, right? So scientists and people who are great at math or working with large data sets. So this is definitely a very promising and rapidly developing field. Next one, this I think will meet us sooner than we think. The universal basic income is a concept very closely connected to the internet and technology, because developing technology will eliminate some of the jobs that we have, right? So like in the early 1920s, we had people connecting the calls by hand. Right now it's all automated, right? So driverless cars or cashierless stores will probably become our future. So I would say this concept of certain amount of cash you get every month will be necessary, because there won't be enough jobs in the society, because some of them will be done by robots or automated by some algorithms. And I see that we are running out of time slowly, so I'll try to wrap it up.
Okay.
So just to close, we also have Internet of Things that I mentioned earlier, and we'll be working remotely more and more.
Can I ask you two more questions that popped up on the chat, and then we will say goodbye. So the first question is, how long do you usually have to learn daily when you need to keep up with the newest things that come up in programming, or in your branch of programming specifically?
Okay, so I would say it depends, but like 20 or 30 minutes daily of reading some interesting stuff. And then if, let's say, I'm programming in JavaScript and I want to keep up with whatever is happening in the JavaScript industry, I would, let's say, spend a day or two from time to time, building something to test new technologies. I think, yeah. And the second question?
And the second question, I'll translate it for you. What's the best age to start programming? We kind of said that now it's the younger the better, but could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I would say so. I mean, if you're 12, I think, if you can read and if you understand, I mean, I don't have kids, so it's really hard for me to assess that perfectly. But let's say if you're 12 or 13, even you can start playing with some simple games that teach you how to program, like not the code per se, but building blocks or learning you some core concepts. And then let's say if you are 15 or 16, you have your own computer, you already speak some English, you can read the documentation, let's say, or download some IDEs or read through some books, and you grasp some maybe a bit harder concepts. Then you're golden. Then you just go on the internet, you play with things, you break things. Nowadays it's easier than ever to do it for free because we have platforms to play with. You don't have to pay anything, and if you're still learning, you can get some things for free.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for participating in our meeting today and answering all the questions. And
thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
Really interesting stories. Thank you guys on the chat for all your questions and active engagement, and we'll see you soon for another episode of our webinars for teenagers, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.